Continuing on this conversation of nonverbal communication competence, let's talk about some guidelines for interpreting nonverbal messages. First and foremost is that there is no nonverbal dictionary. We can't just look up what these messages mean. And the rules for the nonverbal messages that we are receiving are always going to be relative to the individual, as well as the social and cultural contexts in which the interaction takes place. So we have to take in the whole message, not just the nonverbal ones. In addition, we should recognize that certain nonverbal signals are related to one another. And we generally start with one nonverbal signal and we have to layer more cues as feelings are intensified. But overall, we have to remember that these nonverbals are often happening in clusters and that we should look to the whole context of the communication and try to understand the nonverbal cues that way, right? We have to look at the social and cultural norms in which the interaction is happening. We have to look at the individual who is sending these nonverbal cues. We have to look at the verbal messages that are being sent and the other nonverbal cues that are being sent and try to look at the message holistically. Now, when it comes to nonverbal cues, oftentimes there is the discussion of using nonverbal cues to decode deception, to be able to see that somebody is lying to us, for example. However, there is no set profile of deceptive behaviors. We might have been told that if somebody is not looking us in the eye or if they are stammering a lot, that they might be lying to us, but in reality, there isn't a strict code or a strict profile of behaviors that means that somebody is trying to deceive us. And in fact, we generally have a truth bias that leads us to want to believe that a person is telling us the truth, especially if we know and like that person. And oftentimes, the nonverbal behaviors that we see as being deceptive are actually the result of nonverbal leakage. So these nonverbal behaviors occur not when we are deceiving someone, but rather when we are trying to cover up the deception. And so it's difficult to say that if someone is lying to you, they are going to do X, Y, and Z, because people who are lying or deceiving don't necessarily behave non-verbally in those specific ways. Instead, the nonverbal cues that we associate with deception often come from people trying to cover their own butts. And while, like I've said, that there are some codes, some cues that people say are deceptive, right? The not looking in the eyes, the stammering, that sort of thing. Those cues aren't going to necessarily give them away. Again, it's important for us to look at these nonverbal messages in context and try to understand the nonverbal messages alongside the other nonverbal messages that are happening in an interaction, as well as looking at it alongside the verbal messages, how well you know the individual, and the social and cultural norms in which the interaction is happening.